All right, welcome everyone. I know you're hearing an awful lot about the phase two pause for CMMC and what does that mean, and how does that impact you? How does it impact us as a C3PAO? And what we wanted to do was just take a few minutes, talk through what we believe is the proper approach for you to take, give you some of our insight on the just the course of action you can take in the interim, while we all wait to hear what might be coming in the future as far as what that looks like. I'm Mark Hapeman, president of Kieri Solutions. I've got Logan Therrien, who is our chief strategy officer, and I've got Erik Gifford, who is the manager of our consulting practice here with me today. So let's kick off from there. Logan, Erik, one of you want to give a brief synopsis on what is happening as far as phase two and the suspension?
Yes, certainly. Hey, thanks, Mark. I can jump in real quick, and Erik, feel free to jump in whenever. So my basic, I guess, description of what's going on with the DoD CIO's memo regarding the CMMC program is that phase two of the rollout plan, as described in 32 CFR Part 170, is suspended for now, and that's as they go through a review of what is eating at the DIB, specifically small businesses, from what I understand, and how to recover from that and continue, wartime manufacturing or war prep manufacturing. And so what that really entails is that the phase two was an expansion of CMMC third-party assessment requirements for validating compliance with NIST SP 800-171, as well as the inclusion of level 3 CMMC requirements and contracts for the validation of NIST SP 800-172 specific requirements for those DIB members that are doing a little bit more enhanced production that requires just a little bit additional security requirements. So that is ultimately what it is, and what it's causing. Erik, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think almost as important as what it is to convey what it is not. And I think that is that, the rules haven't gone away as far as the expectations for securing CUI, whether it's under legacy regulations like DFARS 7012 or under phase one, because there is still the expectation, any contract that's been issued under phase one, which had self-assessment as a requirement, will continue to have such. And the expectation is, with the delay of phase two, that's just going to extend the period which you still are expected to self-assess and self-attest that you are meeting all the requirements stipulated in 171R2, and of course the assessment objectives of 171A R2, and doing a thorough job of that evaluation and accurately reporting that through SPRS, whether it's on the older tab or on the CMMC tab. So there's still that need. The rules are still there. It's just they're putting a pause on that third-party confirmation of your status through a C3PAO until that determination, that outcome from the evaluation is complete. And what's anticipated to be 60 days, and then a period to kind of merge all that information and the information from the DIB to the RFI to determine what changes, if any, are necessary.
That's a great point, Erik. And there's the things that, and I think where this is getting complicated, there's folks that may not, especially at the implementation level, that may not understand what those clauses are and what's still in contracts. And so what I haven't seen anything is that saying that these DFARS clauses are being removed, but the requirements within them are being modified, right? So DFARS 252.204/7012 is still in place. And that has been in place for nearly a decade, right, in inclusion in contracts. And that is, you must protect CUI in accordance with, there's a couple different sub clauses in there, but Bravo is the one that says you have to have cloud protection, but also that you must use NIST 800-171 and meet the requirements. You have to meet those requirements. right? And it is the inclusion of recently the DFARS 252.204/7021 that says you need to either self-attest or have a third-party assessment come in and validate that all of those requirements are being met. Now, there's a history on how we got here, but either way, those are two requirements, and those requirements did not go away. What is changed is the modification on the rollout plan for that DFARS 7021 implementation. And there was a rollout plan. Again, it's a plan, right? It's not written in stone, but it was written down on paper, but it was a plan, right? And plans we know can be modified, especially as we see such a large industry being affected by it. And the DoD certainly reserves that right. And I think that was always the expectation. In most cases, it was up to the contracting officer to determine how they wanted to roll out that third-party assessment into contracts. Even the way it was written, it was up to the CO's, the contracting officer's perspective on how they wanted to do that, so they could still maintain the industry being able to produce what we did, right? So this is kind of a higher level of going, all right, I see there is a larger impact. So again, there's not really a change on the requirements, just the implementation of it. And I think one thing that is important is that we're approaching this as in a non-biased perspective. And so the history of Kieri, by the way, we have primarily served as a consulting aspect, right? The requirement to get assessed has only been around for a very short time. For many, many years before that, we were helping companies prepare. And we've seen the struggles that the DIB was facing, and so the feedback that the DoD CIO's office is receiving to even causes is not falling on deaf ears. And in most conferences we've been to, or most conversations we have, even with our clients, we've seen the challenges they face with receiving this requirement and understanding the requirement. And why am I receiving this? Why am I getting a DFARS 7012 contract when I don't even receive CUI? Or really challenges like that. I've been at conferences where folks walk out of a room and go, I rent construction gear. Why do I need to get CMMC level 2? So there's a lot of levels of misinformation or misunderstanding that have kind of raised the arms, and we kind of need a reset to figure out where we are and what the requirements are and how to properly do this.
Thank you. And we're going to talk in a separate video a little bit about the history of the starts and stops that have made really reforms every single time. And we believe this is yet another one of those, but we'll delve into that a bit more later. And as Logan said, I just want to reiterate it that our founder, Amira Armand, built this company on 800-171 consulting with a goal of helping organizations that needed to meet that requirement prepare to meet that requirement through the self-assessment process that was in place at the time. So to that end, let's take a minute or two and talk a bit about what we think you can do and how some of what we have can be helpful. This is essentially the sales pitch piece, but we do want you to know about the tools that we have in case you do not know about them, because they have been tremendously helpful for many companies long before CMMC even was a thing, when we were still talking NIST 800-171. So one of you two jump in and give us some thoughts.
I'll take that one to start, and I'll kind of lean into my history of before coming here. I was having to do this at a company that had, around for 100 years, and 30% of their business was in the DIB and so forth. So I know the pains of actually trying to implement that. And in dealing with clients here on a consulting basis, the questions aren't about CMMC. The things where the pain points we're helping them with aren't about, hey, how does the assessment process work, or how do I find a C3PO? It's what does this requirement mean? What do I have to do to actually satisfy this requirement so I can confidently say met? And that continues to be the status with a lot of clients. We occasionally still run into somebody who is working at the requirements level, not the AO level, and you have to enlighten them on that sort of thing. So those issues are still out there, and the requirements associated around those that are driving those questions that people have are still out there. And I think that's where the consulting services are helpful, in that you maybe have, as Logan and I have said sometimes, have fewer were nights where you stare at the ceiling awake at night because am I doing this right? We've literally had clients who thank us when we're wrapped up and they've passed their assessment and so forth, or just feel confident being able to post to SPRS the result that, thank you for the help and preserving my mental health through all of this. Sometimes is kind of the feeling because they were struggling, and it's understandable because oftentimes the person charged with doing this, obviously it's not their only job. They've got 9 other things on their plate. So I know, Logan, you may have seen similar things, in the past and still trending that way.
So I have a few years with Kieri, and I've seen some scenarios, and so we do have compliance documentation that's ready to go. It's like 70% solution, policies, procedures, databases, and I will tell you, most of my time is when I see all the light bulbs pop on, right? So for the folks that I've worked with that says I've been working on this for years, I didn't know how to SSP looked, right? And this is just perfect, right? So to be able to provide a solution like that helps answer most of the questions, right? And that solution, by the way, has explanations in it and has examples of how to employ it in your organization, right? A lot of the times when I go work with clients that are like, we have a prep project, right? So it gets you all the way through all the documentation, helping you implement your organization with a gap assessment at the end of it, right? And so we talk about a reasonable cost solution to get you there for that self-assessment, that attestation. And again, a lot of the folks I've worked with where I didn't realize I could do it this way. We've never seen it this way. We've been kind of going overboard. We were planning on spending more money, and simple solutions work. And again, the KCD is developed on thousands of hours of us doing it as we work through our DIBCAC level 2 assessment twice at this point, right? So, and I do want to bring it back just one thing with the requirements. And so, one thing that is kind of a different where we stand between a year and a half ago and now is that prior to this, you could get away with a 7019, a DFARS 252.204 7019, where you reported SPRS score that could not, it wouldn't have to be perfect. You just have to have it in there, right? You could have a negative number and continue on. And that's not where we stand. And this is why it's so important to understand what requirements still stay in place with that 7021. That self-attestation, it still follows the requirement of you have to have greater than a score of 88, no 5-pointers, no 3-pointers, only a few 1-pointers allowed. And that is what is acceptable as a not perfect score to meet the self-attestation, self-assessment requirements, right? And then beyond that,
great point.
Yeah, only at that point you have 180 days to make it perfect, right? So that's a significant difference of where we were. Again, a year and a half ago to where we are now. So again, going to the understanding as you're self-assessing, right? Time with our folks, time with a reasonable person who understands this. When I say reasonable, right? Not overdoing it, not underdoing it, understands the expectations of the government and is able to help your organization get there, right? So that's a valuable thing to have in your pocket, right, as you walk through this process. Yeah, and we do this. We do this for 60 or 40 to 60 hours a week, right? So, as an organization, do you have that capability? We have it. We're ready to support it.
Yep. Just one
any parting thoughts? I'm sorry, Eric. Maybe that's what you had. So please go ahead.
Hitting that sweet spot is probably one of the key things we help clients with too. You don't want to overburden the organization or spend more than you have to. Nobody does. I mean, companies have to remain profitable, have to be able to still make the thing and ship it. But obviously you do have to satisfy the requirement. And we've seen people at both ends of that spectrum, and helping them dial it in just right to balance that is important.
Thank you. With that, I will just say, if you're a subscriber, thank you. Like the video. If you are not a subscriber, please click on that. I think it's down in this corner, but I never get that right. And my camera's probably reversed and everything else. But there is a subscribe button, and we'd love to have you subscribe. We've got a couple of more videos we're pulling together related to this topic, just to help answer any questions you've got. And if you have any interest in the tools that we've discussed, www.kieri.com, and you'll find in the menu the Kieri compliance documentation package. We have a reference architecture that could also be helpful as you determine your environment and its boundaries. But please take a look. You can schedule a demo with our team and go from there. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, gentlemen, for your help.